over 6,000 of whom are children. However, this number is already outdated, as there are already over 7,000 Palestinians under the rubble at this very second who are breathing their final breaths. Our panel today will discuss the topics of colonialism, ethnic cleansing, and settler colonialism. As such, it is only fitting that we begin with a number of acknowledgements. I want to first and foremost acknowledge that UC Berkeley is both a product and a tool of settler colonialism. It is a product of settler colonialism because, like so many of the institutes and cities of the United States, it was built on the ruins of indigenous lands and the graveyards of the millions of the indigenous residents that were massacred by European settlers. Settlers who, much like their counterparts in the Zionist entity today, believe that they have a divinely given right to plunder, steal, and take the lands of the indigenous residents. UC Berkeley today has come out in unwavering support of the spiritual inheritors of these colonial terrorists. Its administrators praise and defend a settler colonial entity that was founded on the ruins of 500 Palestinian villages and the graves of 15,000 Palestinians massacred by the terrorists of the Haganah and Irgun gangs, Zionist militias that would later become the so-called Israeli Defense Forces. When Berkeley students walked out to ask their school's leadership to divest from the blood money of BlackRock and to call for an end of the massacre of over 15,000 Palestinians, the school responded with veiled threats and conveniently timed emails about so-called academic concerns. So let me end by stating some of the so-called academic concerns we have regarding Berkeley. We are concerned that UC Berkeley is investing in Lockheed Martin, a company that manufactures weapons that shred the bodies of Palestinian babies in Gaza. We are concerned that UC Berkeley continues to hold the desecrated remains of 9,000 indigenous inhabitants of Turtle Island, displaying them in their Museum of Anthropology. We are concerned that Berkeley Law School continues to employ and defend a war criminal by the name of John Yoo, whose life achievements is his unwavering defense of the torture of thousands of innocent Muslims in Abu Ghraib and in Guantanamo. There are many more acknowledgements that should be included in this hall of shame, but unfortunately time does not allow for it. We could speak of Dean Chemerinsky's initial refusal to even acknowledge the thousands of Palestinians that had been massacred in Gaza. We could speak of the physical assaults against pro-Palestinian students that have gone without mention. We could speak of the harassment hijabi and niqabi students have been facing and the slurs that they've been called in the past weeks. I mention all of this for one main purpose. As we listen to tonight's speakers, keep in mind that this very university is complicit in the horrors that we will hear described today. We must keep the pressure on, and we cannot allow those complicit in these atrocities to go unchecked. No business as usual while our brothers and sisters are suffocating under the rubble this very second. And so with that, I'd like to introduce our very first speaker of the night, Imam Rashid. Imam Sundiata is the Imam of Lighthouse Mosque in Oakland, where he delivers Friday sermons, teaches classes, and manages the traditional house. He is currently pursuing a PhD in historical and cultural studies of religion from the Graduate Theological Union in Berkeley, California. Please join me in welcoming Imam Sundiata.
Thank you, man. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Innal hamda lillah nahmaduhu wa nasta'inuhu wa nastaghfiruhu wa nastahdi wa nu'minu bihi wa natawakkalu alayhi wa na'udhu billahi min shururi anfusina wa min sayyiati a'malina man yahdihillahu fala mudilla lahu wa man yudlil fala hadiya lahu. I don't want to take up too much time because I really want to listen to the other speakers. But I think that one of the things that gets lost when we take an individual genocide. So right now it's Gaza and the West Bank. They're killing people in the West Bank and Gaza at the same time. They said that they released 150 people, and then they also arrested 130 people, talking about the Zionists. And I think that one of the things that sometimes we miss is that this is just an ongoing tribute to white supremacy. So if we just think it's just the Zionists, if we just get rid of the Zionists, everything will be okay. But it's not just the Zionists. Because, this isn't about all Europeans, right? what I'm about to say is just about the heterosexual Europeans. No, I'm just playing. It's the heterosexual patriarchy. No, I'm just playing. Kinda. But so the truth of the fact is that white supremacy, when people use it, it can infect even a beautiful thing. So, white supremacy infected Christianity, which alone by itself is a beautiful religion. But once they turned it into a weapon to colonize and eradicate people, the Christians show up, the white European Christian man, and it's like an extinction level event. It's not just, it's beyond just racism. It's beyond just, dang, I don't look nothing like God because he's white. It's not only do you not look nothing like him, but we don't have to give you any rights. We don't have to pay attention to your history at all. We can eradicate you. We can force you to move from your home. And it's not just Gaza, and it's not just Philistine. If you look at the Western Hemisphere, anybody from my complexion, which is a lot. You talk about Jamaica, the Caribbean, just the Caribbean, the South, United States, Brazil. All of those people were forcibly moved. Millions of people were made to leave their homes and come to another place. And once they got here, it wasn't peaches and cream. Know what I'm saying? And so if we don't understand that this is white supremacy that we have to defeat, whether it's in Zionism or whether it's in Western democracy or whether it's in UC Berkeley, it's one enemy. It's not enough for us to say, okay, we're just going to stand up now. And then next week it's going to be somebody else. We have to say, we got to change this whole system. We got to make sure that people are respected no matter what they look like and where they come from. And the people of Gaza have showed us, because nobody's asking whether or not the people of Gaza are human beings anymore, because they've shown so much integrity and so much dignity that it's made non-Muslims convert to Islam. They've shown so much dignity in suffering that the only person that we question their humanity is the people in the White House. I don't think they're human beings. That's just me. I think they're devils. That's just me. That's real. I'm like, these people is the great Shaitan, 1979. If you wasn't around in 1979, you just gonna be like, Ayatollah Khomeini, you might have been right about that. People like, wait a minute, man, I don't know what you're talking about. Y'all could Wikipedia it. There was this revolution in a country called Iran. And I'm not a Shia brother, know what I'm saying? But after the revolution, the leader was like, these people are the great Satan. And my dad was like, that's right. Because my dad understands. You can't be over here 300 or 400 years and still think that anything these people created is going to serve you. People be like, well, the UN might do something. Who created the UN? They ain't gonna create nothing that's gonna check them. Who created Christianity? Know what I'm saying? I'm talking about like white Christianity. It was definitely some diabolical stuff. Brother Ali Attai is in the house. He can tell you about all of the Council of Nicaea and all of that stuff. Some diabolical stuff. Anything that was gonna make people feel like they was inferior. And this could happen if white supremacy is injected in any religion. That religion ain't safe. And as Muslims, we gotta understand that. If we start making all of the Sahabas white except for Bilal, all the Sahaba would look like they was from Ireland. If that's what we teaching everybody, we gotta say, why do we want everybody to be bright skinned? Why? Because that same mentality is affecting us. We're internalizing it as a people. And that's why Israel can be a white nation surrounded by Muslim countries and do whatever they want. You think that that's normal? Like, if somebody moved into my house and just did whatever they wanted, and my family just said, well, we're not going to do nothing. We might do something next week. If you cross this line, we're going to do something. And they cross that line, still nobody does. Now, I'm talking about the Muslims. I'm talking about the Muslimin. Because it's one thing to say, well, you know, America is supporting it. And they are. One thing to say, Bernie Sanders, where are all the Bernie Sanders people at? That dude is a devil. Can I get an amen? She said we changing it. Y'all not gonna go with Cornel West this year? They be like, he got it. My auntie was like, is he gonna comb his hair? You know you're a good presidential candidate when you ain't even got to comb your hair. You like, hey, man. So that's, I don't know if I talked about settler colonialism. It's just white folks, man. They coming over here and they killing off the Native Americans. Then they went to Australia, they killed off the Aborigines. Then they went to, so by the time Israel came to exist in 1948, that stuff was so regular. It went to South Africa, took over South Africa. Start saying, okay, you can't do this, you can't do that. And then they say, it's a democracy. And I'm like, that is a democracy. Because Malcolm X said, we don't know nothing about democracy. We wanted the 22 million black victims of American democracy. You say democracy and all I say is hypocrisy. But then, hey, they was Jim Crow. We waiting for the same people that didn't do nothing about Jim Crow to do something now, but it ain't gonna happen. And I just want, before I do leave, I do want to say that all my brothers and sisters here and all my brothers and sisters throughout the world, they the ones this the reason why there's a pause in fighting and negotiations. Because they kept the pressure up. And as long as we keep that pressure up, we're going to be successful. Because if we sit down and say we can't do nothing, then we already lost. But we say, well, I can't do much, but I can stop buying Starbucks. I can't do a whole lot, but I can help shut down the Bay Bridge. Where you at, Sabria? You do that kind of stuff, that's what's going to actually change this system. Because if we just sit around for another 75 years and wait for these people to stop hating us, they ain't never going to stop. It's in their DNA. They white supremacists. They think that everybody else don't have no rights. They call it manifest destiny. Like the brother was talking about Berkeley. I grew up in Berkeley. Berkeley, California was the first suburb in the United States of America. Did y'all know that? There was this guy, he came to Berkeley, and I'm gonna end with this. There was a bunch of farms out here. He started buying the farmland and making subdivisions. Now everything is just a bunch of subdivisions. In Pleasanton, San Ramon, you live in a subdivision. But one of the things he said was, okay, I'm not going to sell these subdivisions to blacks and Japanese people. And then over time, they said, well, they can live in Berkeley because we need janitors at the college and cooks, but they can only buy houses below Grove Street. Who knows where Grove Street is? What's Grove Street? MLK, that's what I'm talking about. So it used to be called Grove Street because there's a bunch of apple groves out here. And so they said, if you black, so when I was a kid, one of my best friends was named Tetsuya. He lived across the street from me because his family historically couldn't live above Grove Street either because he was Japanese. And this is the history. So when people talk about, oh, it's such a, they talk about a couple of riots or big protests back in the 60s. But that's not the real Berkeley. Them was some students that came here. The real Berkeley is the ones that want to shut down the students for Palestine. So what you talking about some Palestinians for? They don't even need to live above Grove Street. That's how we handle things in Berkeley. So that's all I wanted to say. I know I was rambling. Akulu Koli Hazard was stuck for Lali Walakum. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you once again, Imam Sundiata. And I actually have some good news for you and for everyone else in the room, since we're on settler colonialism and war criminals. Henry Kissinger just died 30 minutes ago, alhamdulillah. So minus one war criminal, alhamdulillah. This is a blessed night, very blessed night. So inshallah, we'll be introducing our next speaker of the night, Sheikh Alauddin al-Bakri. Sheikh Ala is a Palestinian scholar, speaker, and researcher. He holds a bachelor's and master's in Islamic studies. He came to the United States in 1996 and has since worked with Muslim communities and founded and established several Islamic organizations and schools. In 2018, he founded Tawasaw Institute, an Islamic organization aimed at empowering Muslim communities and revitalizing Islamic education. Please join me in welcoming Sheikh Alauddin.
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi man wala. MashaAllah, good group of people. Thank you for coming tonight and keep this movement going. SubhanAllah, if you take 2 steps back and look at our situation, and our generation, you know, even though that we can argue there is, like, let's say 2 generations in this room, but we are witnessing something that is rarely happens in history before us, because of the social media, because of the technology. What are we able to witness? We're able to witness a 500 years of history playing right in front of our eyes within 40 to 50 days. Do you know how rare is that? Usually you'll read about these things in the books of history, and you have to use your imagination when you're reading about what actually happened. When you actually hear about Genghis Khan, and when him and his children, they're responsible for wiping out 12% of the world's population. Hand slaughter, no guns, no bullets. You have to use your imagination. Even when I want to learn, when I read about the First World War, the Second World War, I have to use my imagination. I was born way after that. So the idea here is, I just want you to see what's going on and to recognize that when we hear, and I brought a video, wanted just to play 20 seconds of that video, but it seems we have to go from the beginning until 1 minute and 20 seconds. But what I want you to hear and listen and live with me and experience, live with me something. What are we hearing through the cries of the children and the women of the people in Gaza, and their shock at what is happening to them, the horror that they're going through, the relentless bombardment every minute? What we are hearing, we're hearing the voices of the men and women of the Native Americans that we didn't hear. We're hearing the voices and the cries of that they are at shock at what's happening to them, how someone could come and literally like burn them, kill them, shoot them, push them out of their land, wipe them out. I asked some students to make a research about the numbers between North American continent, and South America. There's actually not even good statistics about the Native Americans in South America. Imagine that this thing that started 525 years ago, from 1492, from Christopher Columbus, you go and watch right now and on YouTube, what did he do after landing in the Bahamas? You will find in the Caribbean islands, actually, you will find just within 1 week of his arrival, he committed a genocide and tortured and killed the people that actually received him and his crew with open arms. And then they started realizing, like, what are you doing here? Immediately just wanted to take some spoils of war before going back to Spain and saying, I found something. So literally from the first step, from 1492, landing in the Americas, in the Caribbean islands, this crying started. Then you go over North America, Central America, South America. We're not talking about 3 towns. We're not talking about 3 countries. We're talking about 4 continents. 4 continents within 500 years. What we are seeing right now is the tip of the tip of the tip of the iceberg. What we are seeing right now with our own eyes, when we see this, we should imagine and we should relive the experience that the people in North America lived, Central America lived, South America lived, the Aborigines in Australia lived, and then coming back to Africa and taking almost 18 million people. Most of them died on the ships in their own throw up from the seasickness, laying in shackles into the floor of the ship, bringing them to here and creating hybrid races. The number of Native Americans went from 50 million between North America and South America, all the way to hundreds of thousands of people, and creating a new hybrid race between the Africans that were brought from Africa and the Europeans and the Native Americans. When you look today at the characteristics of the face of someone who's called Brazilian, this is actually not how Brazilians look like. This is a new race, hybrid race, that was created by colonialists from actually bringing the Africans. and taking them from their homes. And then suddenly you find yourself on a ship about to die. You land, you start working. You're not allowed to form a family, separate men from women, keep on raping women, so that you can bring a hybrid race, stronger, wiser, that they can work for you, and then so that they can plant this whole continent for you. What we are witnessing right now, all of this kept on going and going and going and going and going until it came back to where it started. The Europeans were so used to killing that when there was no more continents and no more places and no more indigenous people to kill, they turned against each other. Between the First World War, look at the statistics, 20-something million in the First World War, 85 million, 30 million Russians died under the bombardment of Germany. 30, can you imagine? You know, we human beings, our brain cannot take it. You disconnect. Like if you have one family member that gets sick, you feel sad, you bond with them. If two family members get sick, it becomes like a bit like if three family members, if the whole family becomes sick, you don't know what to do. If I tell you like one person died, you can process pain. If I tell you a whole family died in a car accident, you're shocked. If I tell you a whole country is wiped out, you don't know, you disconnect. If I tell you a continent, you disconnect. This is our time to connect back with all of these people that passed away. They were real people with real names, with real dreams, with families that existed. We live on their land, the Aloni's land, right now, right here. And we are walking thinking that nobody ever existed here, nobody ever lived. When some of these lands that we live on is actually sacred land for them. Look, after 500 years, I go from university to university asking 3-4 questions. Name for me one Native American dish. Name for me one Native American piece of cloth. Name for me one Native American religion. What was the name of that religion? Name for me one Native American deity that they worshiped, whether it is Allah, God Almighty, anything. Name for me one Native American language. Total wipeout. And this is what they want to do to the Palestinians, but it's not working. This is what, after 1,000 years, the very same people that accuse Muslims of terrorism, after 1,000 years of Muslims ruling India, if you put back Bangladesh and India and Burma and Nepal back, that's the Muslim India. The first time there was India, there was never an India in the history of India. There was 50 kingdoms. The first king that united them was, his name is Aurangzeb. Aurangzeb united the larger India. After 1,000 years, not 500 years, for every one Muslim in India, there is 2 to 3 Hindus. After 1,000 years, name for me one Indian dish. All of you know. Name for me one Indian clothing for men and women. Name for me one Indian religion. Name for me the Indian deities. Name for me the Indian languages. They're all preserved. And we are the one who's accused to be terrorists at the end of the day. My dear brothers and sisters, what we are seeing is the tip of the, and this is a chance for us to live. And these people who for the last 500 years, and this is the opportunity that our generation has. This is a generational thing. You've all seen the statistics. 35 years or younger, you are, with the Palestinians, with the ceasefire, with this, with that, against the policies of the state of Israel. 45, 49 and older, so people are used to the old system. And they don't want that old system to be gone. But we are witnessing the new system. And after we see this with our own eyes, with shock and awe, right now, Allah has chosen our generation to see the truth. And once you know something that others don't know, immediately it becomes your job to become the messenger to that which you know. If you analyze, for the Muslim students who are listening, and all the other people of faith, when we say a messenger, do you know what is a messenger? A messenger is a person that comes to know what other people around him doesn't know. So they come to know about God, the unseen, the day of judgment, the soul, the things that nobody knows. The second that messenger knows what the others don't know, that becomes a messenger, and now he has to go and tell everybody. At this point, Allah has chosen our generation to be the messengers of justice, to witness after 525 years of the world going from one war to another, from one misery to another. Allah has chosen our generation to bring a change and to be the messengers of the truth. And it is working, and it is working. And right now, when you look at us, what can we do? We can do a lot. As a matter of fact, we're seeing how all of these myths, oh, it's Muslims versus Jews. The most effective protesters right up to date, in terms of going and sitting in the Congress or taking over the New York station, is the Jewish, Jewish Voice for Peace. And if not now, the people, it's not a Muslim versus a Jew. It was never like that. From the year 70, when the Romans destroyed that last temple of the Jews in Palestine, the Jews, the only time they've seen peace and justice and were able to live normal is when the Muslims came in the year 622 or after 634 to Palestine and allowed the Jews to come back. And you cannot, now they're trying to rewrite history about how the Jews lived in the Muslim countries. But what I'm trying to say here, my dear brothers and sisters, is that what are we going to do once the message has come to us? Where do we go from here? Where do we go from here is we unite with everyone on this planet. Because this issue of Palestine, I really cannot explain it. I can explain it just as a Muslim. But if I was not a Muslim, I will be very puzzled. Russia attacked Ukraine. How many protests did you see? 1 or 2 protests in the beginning, few people went out. How many atrocities has happened around the world? Some way, somehow, when it happens in Palestine, in that holy land, that land is connected with God and is connected, wired to the heart of every human being. I have no explanation why when Palestine is the issue, the whole world comes out and the people and the non-Muslims go out and protest more than the Muslims. There is no logical explanation to that, except that Allah wants us to unite after that which is good and do something good. We Muslims have this belief that every child is born pure, innocent, and sinless. Every child is born good. We, in our faith point of view, humanity originally is good. But if humanity does not, you don't give it something that maintains its goodness, and in this case, we believe it's Islam, then there is no bottom to where this thing can go. Because as you see, when I go out for the protest, my niyyah is I'm going out for protest for our brothers and sisters, the Huays and the Uyghurs in China. This issue of Palestine represents them too, because no one went for protest for them. Last week, I was protesting in front of the Chinese, embassy for the Tibetans, the Hong Kong people, and the Huays and the Uyghur Muslims. Uyghur, the right way to pronounce it. Uyghur. The Uyghur Muslims we are there. When we go out and protest, do you know that the same policies that the Israel has been doing with the Palestinians has been copied and pasted to India? Kashmir has been going under over 2 years of siege, embargo, and sanctions. They're doing an immigration of Indians to Kashmir. 200 million Muslims, plus 100 million minorities of the Dalits. They are under the threat of losing their citizenship overnight, so that they will never become a threat to the BJP government, to the Modi and to his RSS movement, the far-right Hindu nationalists, that they actually want to take the citizenship and make Muslims in India and the Dalits, make them refugees in their own country. Copy and paste of what's happening in Palestine. When we go out and protest, we're protesting for the minorities, the Hindus and the Muslims and the Kashmiris. When we go out and protest, we're protesting for the Rohingyas and the Burmese Muslims that have been burned, like literally with fire. They went with guns of fire, burning one village after another, to a point 1.5 million Muslims have to move from Burma to Bangladesh because they were called, "You're Bengali, go back to your country." When we go out and protest, we are protesting for all the oppression that happened to the, there's no rock bottom like this. When you think about it, you're trying to choose which one is the worst. In my mind right now, I just put the suffering. Like for a long while, it was like the African Americans. Because like to come and take a person, like, okay, Tell the Palestinians to move out of Gaza to Egypt. That's one thing. No. Take the Palestinians out to a whole other continent, separate them, rape the woman, take the men as... That's just too much. So to me, until the conflict and the plight of the brothers and sisters in China happen, the father, imagine I am in jail and someone is living with my wife and children, a minor from the Chinese government army, his job to make sure nobody speaks the Uyghur language at home, nobody speaks Arabic, nobody prays 5 times a day. Inside your house, you have someone that lives with you 24 hours, informant. To me, that's more than what the Palestinians are going through. Like, I'd rather be bombed out of existence in Gaza than going through what the brothers and sisters in China are going through. It's just too much. It just defies logic, it's better to die with dignity than live in humiliation. No, we're going to keep you alive. We're going to make you drink alcohol, eat pork, not pray, sing the national anthem, don't speak your language. You have to change your name. You have to change your language. You have to change everything. 14 girls, they threatened them. If you don't get married to Chinese Hans to dilute the race, we will not take your parents out of jail. 14 girls made a pact between them. They got married in one night. They released their parents from the Chinese prisons. And in one night, they all committed suicide together. Because if a woman gets raped one time, a woman gets raped, the rest of her life is tragedy. How can a woman be raped every night and live with that? What we are standing for is way bigger than Palestine. Palestine, Allah, some way, somehow, again, I have no explanation why people come out in the streets, because they see it. And alhamdulillah, the social media that they designed to destroy your generation, the Z generation, the X generation, they created, alhamdulillah, it actually, the magic flipped on the magician. And now, no, control Instagram, control Facebook, control this, control that. Wow, it came out of our hands. The narrative is changing. And since we are Muslims and we believe Allah created people good, we're going to work with everyone to change this world system. Once and for all, we're going to work with everyone, anyone. Doesn't matter where you come. Doesn't matter even if you are a believer or not. You don't even believe in God. Come, let's work. God created us all good. And with that, with the multitude of the millions of people that are going around the world, yes, we can see people think, they don't know how history flips. History sometimes takes turn that nobody expected. The Mongolians and the Tatars killed 2 million people in 1 month in Baghdad, only after a few years to go back as Muslims. The Mughal went back and introduced Islam, ruled India with Islam for 1,000 years. The same people that came to kill all Muslims went home Muslims, and the Tatar converted to Islam and ended up living in all the southern Russia, all the way to Poland. History takes weird turns that you cannot understand when the conquered conquers the conqueror. This is the turns of history. And at this point in time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put this trust in us, and we have to realize the moment. I want you all see all of these young girls, the mothers, they bombed all of my family. The girl was saying, she's in high school. She said, I have 3 brothers. I wish we all died. I have to be the mom and the dad and the sister. I don't know how to do that. I'm just a high school girl. How can this? Nobody can take this. And then she stopped and said, Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakil. Allah will make it work. What does Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakil means? That means that Allah is enough for me and He's the best to rely on. Right now, when you go to university and study, what is the cause of stress and depression and anxiety and panic attack? Is when the human mind perceives that the perceived demand exceeds the perceived resource. The perceived pressure exceeds the perceived tolerance. Like, this is too much, I cannot handle it. Or this is so much demand. You students know this more than anything. Oh my God, I have 3 finals tomorrow and I'm sitting down listening to Sheikh Alauddin and I don't know if I'm going to fail or not tomorrow. When the perceived demand exceeds the perceived resource. Do you know what happens when you believe in Allah? You believe that all of a sudden, you have unlimited resource. And unlimited, so there is no demand that will ever overtake you, and there is no pressure that you cannot handle. Why? Because if God with you, you can handle the entire world on your head. If Allah is with you, if you believe the divine, the unlimited source of power and strength is with you, you can face it. And that's the only explanation why the people in Gaza are able to handle what they are handling. Listen carefully. They're constantly saying, Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakeel, la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah, inna lillahi wa inna. They all come back to God, that I'm going to handle this, and I'm not leaving my country. I'm not repeating the Nakba again. I'm going to sit down here. Their job is just to stay alive. That's their job. Our job here is to work together and change the world one heart at a time. We are the messengers of justice. We're the messengers of goodness. We're the messenger of freedom. We're the messengers of peace through the world. And Allah has exposed these people, ugly people that have no bottom. Who don't know when they're going to stop. They will never stop. They will never stop. But Allah has created good people like you, and we are here. We're going to do it, inshallah. Let's listen to the next speaker. Jazakumullah khair wa assalamu alaikum.
Barakallahu feek, Sheikh Ala. And as Sheikh Ala mentioned, one of the spiritual weapons of the people of Gaza, that despite the bombings and the airstrikes and the genocide being committed against them, Israel cannot cease from them, is the spiritual weapons of dua and of qiyam and of salah. So please join us after this panel at Berkeley Masjid for a night of qiyam and dua with Sheikh Ala al-Bakri, where we will be, idhnillah, using our spiritual weapons against the Zionist settler colonials who are committing this atrocious genocide, and not just against them, but against every single person who thinks that no power on earth can subjugate them. Inshallah ta'ala, we will be using this qiyam to supplicate the Almighty and to reduce the power of those who think they have no equal in this earth. We have the modern day pharaohs, the modern day pharaohs, who are declaring to the world, Ana Rabbukum al-A'la, who have gotten up to the world and have been declaring, I am your Lord the Most High. No one can take me. No one can seize me. No one can deal with me. And so, bi'idhnillah ta'ala, join us tonight to show them that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will destroy you just as He destroyed Fir'aun wa junuduh ma'ahu bi'idhnihi ta'ala. And so, please join us in welcoming our next speaker of the night, Dr. Hatim. Dr. Hatim is a scholar of religion, politics, and globalization. He completed his PhD in Near Eastern Studies right here at Berkeley with a thesis titled Al-Quds in Islamic Consciousness, a textual survey of Muslim claims and rights to the sacred city. He co-founded Zaytuna College, the first Islamic liberal arts college in the United States. Dr. Bazian is also professor in the Department of Near Eastern Ethnic Studies right here at Berkeley, and the author of numerous books, including Palestine, It Is Something Colonial. Jazakallah khair.
Assalamu alaikum, and good evening and welcome. So I want to cover what I consider to be the 6 overarching elements of colonization, and connected to why Zionism is a colonial project to understand these 6 elements. So I'm going to read those 6 elements to begin with, and I'll go over each one of them. One, that colonialism is a Western global project. Second, it's a commercial economic project. Third, it's connected to the military-industrial complex and militarization. Fourth, embedded in it is racism and a hierarchy of races. Fifth, it undertakes genocide, sometimes multiple genocides. And then 6, it is connected to imperial Christianity or imperial religion. So to begin with, going back to number 1, it's a Western colonial project. If we go back to 1884, the Paris Conference, where European powers got together in order to divvy up Africa, north, south, east, west, Africa became a colonial territory belonging to European powers. Only 2 small sections, one in around Ethiopia and Liberia, that were not part or did not come under direct colonization. But all of Africa became a colonial possession. Prior to 1884, Egypt got colonized in 1882. Then North Africa is colonized much earlier, and India. Many people speak about the Middle East. There is no such thing as the Middle East. That framing was developed by the British, especially from India, as they were looting $45 trillion worth of property from India. They needed a place or a secure pathway. So they began to formulate from India what is called the Middle East. So in Europe, Far East, Middle East, Near East are all colonial terminology. No one from the Arab world or Muslim world says, I am from the Middle East. Because to say that, you're arbitrating your relationship to London or the UK or Great Britain. For those who know me, we always say, Alhamdulillah, it's no longer great, right? So the framing of territorial geographical demarcation as part of the Western colonial project. Africa gets divided into two major scopes. One is the English-speaking, right, going all the way from Egypt to South Africa, and then the other is the French, and then in the middle you get the Dutch, the Belgium, and so on. The colonial project was part and parcel of European modernity. It actually rewired the world. Many of us in many parts of the world, either your second language is English or French. That's why when we go and visit France, we say, sorry, we're being colonized by the British. We only speak English. While our Algerian, Tunisian, Moroccan, Malay, our brothers from Malay, not from Malay, from Mali, from Senegal, from Côte d'Ivoire, they speak French. That is a direct outcome of the colonial legacy. Zionism is born out within Western colonial world structure. It was not born among Jews of the Muslim world. Zionism was not born in Iraq, was not born in Syria, was not born in Palestine, was not born in Egypt, was not born in Morocco, was not born in Yemen, was not born in Iran, and was not born in Syria as well, where you have Jewish populations. Western powers adopted Zionism to create a buffer state. As the Suez Canal was opened, creating a buffer state in order to protect all the loot that the British were getting that's going to pass through the Suez Canal. And at the same time, they were deeply, 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 deeply anti-Semitic and continue to be so today. Don't let any European stand in the face today and tell you that they actually are the ones to fight anti-Semitism. Their hypocrisy knows no limits. Europe have never been able to live with the other. Europe has never been able to live with the other. Either they have committed the Inquisition, again, remind them, because Johnny come lately, after they get a Starbucks coffee, they come to theorize, just because they got a Starbucks latte, all of a sudden with the white foam, they begin to give you white epistemology. Complete, you have to get actually a mental lobotomy in order to engage many of these individuals that begin to talk to you about both Europe and the Muslim world. This sick man, Leopold of Belgium, kills 50% of the population of the Congo. 50% of the population as his little reserve. They have the audacity to come to tell the Muslims why you're so violent. Well, maybe we eat a lot of hummus. Right? Literally, this project is a global project adopting Zionism, one for colonial possessions to be forwarded from India and the colonies, and the second to deal with the Jewish question. Europe have two questions simultaneously in the 18th century, 19th century, 20th century. The Eastern question, precursor to Islamophobia. The Jewish question, which is anti-Semitism. Again, they always get an F because they always have question, never answer. Their only answer is genocide. All right? That's it. Whenever Europe has a question, it's a genocidal question. It's a racist question. The Eastern question is a racist question. The Jewish question is a racist question. So, protecting trade, a global system, that remap the world as a whole. So Zionism is a Western, part of the Western global colonial project. Second, it's a commercial project. You know, these days they come and say Israel is a startup country. Every colonial project was a startup country, disrupting the local economy in order to build the colonial economy. You know, this little president called Macron, right? He's Mufti Macron because he always goes around to tell Muslims what Islam is, right? He goes to it, he says, Islam has a problem. MashaAllah, it's Mufti Macron, right? A graduate of Sharia, right? Sharia of nothingness next to the Eiffel Tower of, right, maximum hypocrisy. This person goes to Algeria and tells the Algerians, you need to thank us because we built school. We're not going to apologize for actually killing 8 million Algerians. 2 to 3 million in the first 3 years and 1.5 million in the last 3 years of the liberation struggle in Algeria. They actually had detonated nuclear tests in Algeria. Till today, they have not told the Algerians where they actually have tested their nuclear devices. Every colonial project was a commercial project, disrupting local economy and extracting resources. They extracted every resource out of Africa. Africa is the richest continent in the world. Africa is the richest continent in the world. We pillaged Africa and we continue to do so. Again, for those who, again, you hear me, I always will have to talk about chocolate. Right? I always have to talk about chocolate because the top countries that produce chocolate, they do not have a single cocoa plant in their country. The Swiss chocolate, the French chocolate, See's candy, right? Ghirardelli Square down there, right? 60% of the chocolate comes from West Africa. Over 1 million child labor that is actually in West Africa. The chocolate company signed an agreement under the UN in the year 2000 to end child labor. So far till today, they have not done so. It's a commercial project. The European and the United States are in the Middle East. Again, they're not looking for Moses, Jesus, or Muhammad. They're looking for oil. They're looking for natural gas. Again, you might disagree with me. It's the only time where the Western world loves something black. Oil. That's the reality. Every other place, they bring death to black people. All right? So they're in the Middle East for commercial reasons. And even in Gaza today, there's a massive gas outfield right there outside of Gaza that Egypt is competing for it, Israel is competing for it, Greece is competing for it, Turkey is competing for it. European countries are investing because they want to explore this gas in order to provide Europe with the natural gas that they need to disconnect it from the gas that they're getting from Russia. Europe every day needs 40 million cubic metric ton of natural gas. Europe does not have any resources. Whatever it has is very limited. How many cheese, what you call variety, you're going to get? Again, from France. How many cows you can get from the Netherlands? As far as resource, even you go, I'll actually ask you to go to the speech of Pope Urban II, who declared the Crusades. He said, Europe does not have resources, and that's why we're going to go out to the east to conquer the Muslim lands. His speech that he gave launched the Crusades. Till today, Europe does not have resources. They extract resources, commercial resources, manufacture it, send it out as a finished product. So the second is commercial project. Israel is connected to that commercial project. That's why it's wired into all of our corporate entities. All right? HP is there. Google yourself to the bank is there. All right? Starbucks is there. All the surveillance technology is there. Military industrial complex is there. Why? Because it's connected to the colonial project. They try to tell us that they're geniuses. Again, it does not take a genius to connect to colonization. It takes somebody that have foregone their moral, ethical worldview. Right? That's why Israel is advancing, because it's been supported from the get-go by Great Britain, which was the superpower at the time, European powers, and then was inherited by the United States as a superpower. If a superpower is supporting you, you're going to have muscle, commercial muscle and other muscles. They think that because they look at themselves in the mirror, they think that they're wise. They don't understand there has been a utilitarian state that is supported by a superpower. That's it. All right? Again, sometimes when you talk to yourself in the shower, you get to become genius. When you actually talk to yourself in a settler colonial shower, you become to appear to yourself as being a genius. There is nothing genius or miraculous. It's actually so normative. They try to complicate it, or it's complicated. It's nothing complicated about settler colonialism and commercial extraction. Every company in the West knows this. If you have a lithium battery, that lithium battery is extracted. If you eat chocolate, that is extracted. If you eat grapes in the winter, that is extracted from Chile. That's why grapes do not grow in the middle of winter. When you go to Safeway and see grape, that's an extracting of vegetables and fruits that the global South does not eat. But we go, oh, there's about 20 varieties of apples in the middle of February. Where is that coming from? Oh, it's from Chile. Extractive. We make less than 1/20th of the world population. We consume almost 60% of the renewable resources of the world. We think that thou shalt have 4 cars in the house. Thou shalt have hot water whenever you turn the faucet. Thou shalt have a TV, plasma TV in every house, including in the garage. Thou shalt go to Safeway, to Costco, to every place and find everything is there. The rest of the world is holding us up on their shoulder. All right, so it's a commercial project. Third, military-industrial complex. The intertwining of colonialism met military-industrial expansion. All the weapons advancement were connected to the colonial projects, whether it's Africa, whether in the Arab world, Muslim world, or in here. So it's not surprising. I think the United States Congress have just allocated $14.5 billion. Maybe there's a few million here and there difference to Israel. I want to tell you, the United States controls 56% of the global trade in military sales. Last year is about $1.8 trillion of military sales. The United States, 56%. Whenever we give aid to countries, military aid, it's an indirect subsidies to our military-industrial complex. Right? That's why as soon as the Gaza war emerged, if you monitor and look at the stock market, actually the value of the stocks in the military-industrial complex increased by $26 billion overnight. Meaning our military sales, military-industrial complex sales is about $1 trillion. That's us. Again, from Berkeley, we love death economies. We run the 2 U.S. military labs, Los Alamos and Livermore. We perfected the creation of death machines and make it connected to our supposedly academic institutions. Don't confuse the protest movement in Berkeley with Berkeley as an academic institution. We had a strong protest movement, often from outside, not from inside the university. And we had a strong movement because the university was literally suckling at the military-industrial complex, and it's still till today. People go to the free speech movement and they take a picture next to the wall will have Mario Savio. Mario Savio, for a long period of time, was not allowed to be on this campus. The hypocrisy of the university, they celebrate what you call gone heroes, but they don't celebrate the heroes that are making history today. Right? You need to know exactly, because we often celebrate the projected image that is created, not the reality of us being literally suckling at the military-industrial complex. $770 million in my last look at how you see benefit from the military-industrial economy. $770 million. And we were so much distorted that our retirement accounts were also invested in the prison industrial complex. Because you had 100% occupancy in jail. It's actually much better than investing in the Hilton, because in Hilton they might have 84% occupancy. You invest in jail, it's 100%, sometimes 110% occupancy. military-industrial complex. Weapons are being tested on the Palestinians. Some of the early discussions about the Israeli tank, the Markava, right? That is actually, its sales are going to plummet because it has been damaged in the Gaza attack, that it was being projected as a superior tank. So now actually military-industrial complex economy are looking whether that's actually a top tank to buy or not to buy. Palestinians and before them Iraqis and Afghans were the testing ground for military-industrial complex weapons. I came to know DIME. What is DIME? It's actually this heavily radioactive bombs that were used at the Iraqis that had radioactive material. What happened is US troops who were firing also got impacted, what came to be known as the Gulf War syndrome. You're getting a radioactive material because the one who's shooting the bomb itself getting residues of the nuclear material that is in the bomb itself. It's tested in Iraq, tested in Afghanistan, now being used at the Palestinians. So colonization is connected to military-industrial complex. The business of war is war. Every time we have a war, there are actually stocks that is invested in military-industrial complex shoot up the skies. And many of our retirements, many of our investments are there. Fourth, racism. Colonialism was vested on a hierarchy of races. It's not surprising that the colonial period also corresponds to Darwin's theory of hierarchy and natural selections. We all love natural selections and understand the evolution, but what part of Darwin that we don't study, that Darwin actually put the hierarchy of races. You don't study that piece, is really buried up, but he actually created a hierarchy of races. And long and behold, those up in the north, Europe, have been posited as being the superior race. Colonialism created the racial hierarchy and imposed on it this hierarchy in order to justify its colonization and dehumanization of people. Every colonial project dealt with the indigenous population in a systematic elimination. Zionism saw itself as a European civilizational mission against the inferior races of the East. And again, if you don't, go and read Herzl. Go and read all of the early Zionists. They did not actually have any shyness about it. Similar to what you have Ben-Gvir and Smotrich and all of the rest of the Zionists today, they actually still speak with a racist epistemology because they were born within the womb of European racist epistemology. Now, I know some people say, oh, isn't Islam says that we're all equal? How do we discuss race and racism? You're mistaken the basic foundation of Islamic epistemology with the world system that is vested in the racist epistemology. Muslims are literally absorbed that racism themselves. Right? The fact that Islam is an anti-racist religious tradition does not mean that Muslims do not aspire to be European. That's why Fair and Lovely is one of the most widely used cream, and I have some in my office because it helps me. So we have to undo. If you go to the Muslim world, so all of the commercials up there is actually projecting white faces. Why? Because we have already embedded in ourselves this racial hierarchy. All right? So that racial hierarchy is active in Palestine. It is also active between European Jews and Eastern Jews, Sephardic and Ashkenazi. Right? Ashkenazi are the European Jews, Sephardic are the Eastern Jews, but also a hierarchy toward Ethiopian Jews, which are the black Jews. They actually are in classification. So in Israel itself, there is a racial hierarchy, so much so that when the AIDS epidemic was underway, the blood from the Ethiopians were actually thrown out. So much so that the Ethiopians had to go to court and challenge the government for its practices. So even within the Jewish population, that racial hierarchy is there, and then a racial hierarchy toward the Arab population. So you cannot approach colonization without taking account of racism. I know everybody, oh, let's hold hands and think we are the world. Well, the world doesn't recognize you. The world that you think sees you, the world does not see you. So that's a problem. The human rights structure was vested in positing European as the model for the human, which means global south population or the global south population that live in the global north are not recognized as full human, because to be recognized as full human, you have to actually first be admitted in the category of the human. And to be admitted in the category of human, you have to be white, or to be literally admitted into the classification of whiteness within the structure. That's why in France they have a problem, because all of a sudden there's so many people that are with darker complexion. That's the result of colonization. In England, they have the same problem. In the Netherlands, so much so that these societies now are reverting back to Nazis. Neo-Nazi groups are winning elections. The Netherlands, Geert Wilders won the election in the Netherlands. Right? He won the election. His party walked into the parliament a few years with Nazi memorabilia on their insignia on their clothes. Now, here's an evidence to think that educated people can learn from their past. I think European evidence goes actually the opposite. One strike, World War I, strike two, World War II, and now they're working on strike three. Neo-Nazis are coming back into seats of power, using race and racism and projecting themselves in that way. Fifth, genocide. And that's what we're talking about, genocide today in Gaza. Every colonial project engaged in genocide. Settler colonialism engages both in genocide and transfer. Israel is engaged in genocide and transfer, so much so they actually think themselves sophisticated. Like Smotrich, Ben-Gvir, Netanyahu, we need to transfer or send the Palestinians to Egypt. Why don't Egypt take us? Like you're going to Christmas vacation and take a few Palestinians with you. All right? Or these sophisticated in Congress standing up and say, yeah, well, you know, it happened in the past. And these are the sophisticated bunch. I don't want to talk about the unsophisticated bunch. All right? Every colonial project had genocide and transfer. Now, Native Americans experience both in here. Genocide, and the remaining population would put them in concentration camps. We call it reservations. If you take Native American reservations / concentration camps, they have the lowest standard of living across the world. They would be at the lowest rung in relations to all the criteria, whether it's diabetes, in terms of death, in terms of suicide, in terms of kidney failures, all that. You'll actually have one of the lowest criteria. In the richest country in the world, you actually have a population that literally is living a concentration camp type of living. So Palestinians are subject to settler colonial projects that's invested in genocide, multiple genocide. Don't allow anyone to put a microphone in your face and ask you the question, why Muslims are violent? Also, I would say, don't allow anybody to say, why black people are violent. There's some, what you call, these smart Alex on TV. As soon as a black person is shot, they say, well, why don't you discuss black on black violence? They think they're sophisticated. That's the problem. Right? They think they're actually making a philosophical point. Right? They think that they're actually, and then the worst also, they try to blame the conditions of the society in there. Well, most white kill other whites. Why? How about white on white violence? Why don't you discuss it? Oh, it does not actually approach us. That's not a sophisticated problem because we have different issues. Right? So again, always we're asked about our violence because there is a solid DNA marker that's called violence for Muslims, for global South people. I always say Muslims don't even qualify to the sweet 16 of violence. We don't even qualify sweet 16. Again, you want to count them? Well, let's count them together. Crusades. Now, the Crusaders were such what you call a murderous bunch that in the way to Palestine and the East, they actually massacred every Jewish town, village, and community that they arrived at. In their, I think the sixth crusade, they couldn't make it, so they actually ransacked Constantinople, Eastern Christians. Their own chronicle said when they entered Jerusalem, they 70,000 they killed in the city that the blood was running to their ankles. That's their chronicles, not the Muslim archive, their chronicles. Again, if you want the references, I'll give it to you, again, by date and time that they had. So crusades, Inquisition. All right, we tell you, well, you know, the Muslims mistreat their minorities. Can you tell me, where are the Muslims in Spain? Where are Jewish communities in Spain? Where are they? Completely wiped out. All right, so the Inquisition. Then we get about colonization of the Western world, and I think we covered from north, south, the population. We still have a doubt how many figures of that. Multiple genocides. The colonization of Africa. North, south, east, west. You speak about it, you just count. And even till today, last time I was in France, actually, I was in the airport, and the French troops were going, you know, they're like missing some croissants in Mali. All right? Literally being loaded on planes to bring peace to Mali. Every time that you have these peace troops coming, run to the hills. And also if their development specialists come, run to the hills. Get your cow and get to the hills, or sheep. At least you're better off. So colonization of Asia, or what they call Indochina, colonization of the Philippines. Anybody, I will always ask people, did anybody watch the weddings, the British weddings? Anybody watch the British weddings? You know, we stay up till late at night to look at the weddings and so on. How many times do you actually have to stay up late at night to watch a drug cartel having their own wedding? They made their money out of the opium wars in China. They bombed the Chinese ports in order to force opium in China. But every time you have to talk about Latin America, you say, oh, the drug cartels. As if you get up in the morning in Colombia or say, oh, which cartel I should join, and I don't know how much the initiation fee. $200 billion industry goes for our banking system. If you can make a mistake on IRS form, you'll find like a SWAT team over you. But 200 billion more making its way through our banking system, and nobody knows about it. All right? So, genocide. We don't even qualify. Again, World War I, World War II, these are the Super Bowl, the final. Belongs to Europe. All right? Third, last item is Christianity. And I'm talking about imperial Christianity. And connected also today to the notion that everybody is waiting for Jesus to come back. All right? And many are instrumentalizing the fight between Muslims and Jews in order to prepare the ground for Jesus to come back. So they have a whole bunch of people that are just so intent on Armageddon. All right? They just think that we want to force God's hand because we can't wait. You know, lunch is coming and they're going to be served at 12. If Jesus does not come back, I need to destroy the world. All right? So literally you have the evangelicals in here, attached to the others also, Messianic Zionism, that wants to actually bring what they call the end of time, and they think of Islam, Christianity, and Judaism as an imperial religions, as if you think the Prophet Muhammad, the Prophet Jesus, the Prophet Moses are salesmen for the military-industrial complex. That Muhammad is going to come with an F-16, right? Moses is going to come in a stealth bomber, and Jesus most likely will come with an aircraft carrier. That's the type of religion that is being sold to people, right? And everybody is basically listening. If you listen, people are just waiting for the destruction. Where do you read this? How do we transfer Jesus, who says, love thy enemy, rather than bomb thy enemy? Where do we get that? Other than actually the military-industrial complex favors that type of theology because it's much better for profit margin. So they have different understanding. When you say the prophet said, they understand the prophet of Wall Street, not the prophet that you're talking about. Right? So Christianity actually stands accused today in its imperial construction and selling us at this point a particular type of epistemology that is wanting to bring the end of time and bring Jesus back, and Jesus can only come back if destruction is visited upon this earth. Now, I understand people read end of time scenarios in the traditions, whether it's Christianity, Islam. all of the hadith and most of the statements in those are ahad or weak hadiths. But people actually go to the, what you call, to the pastures because it's almost like religious entertainment. It becomes, oh, let's talk about what is happening, forgetting that God asked you to build the earth, not to actually participate in its destruction. But it's actually entertainment because it demobilizes people. Wait, stay in there. Let them bomb some more because Jesus is coming. All right? Send 14.5 billion more bombs because Jesus is coming. That's basically the method. Muslims and Jews becomes what you call supporting actors in their own story because they are only on the stage of this millenarian type of theology. We're only to fight because this fight is being instrumentalized by a greater narrative. The narrative that we are speaking about is a Western European narrative that exceptionalizes European Western history and make it the only normative history for it to be imposed on the world. So when we speak about history, it is actually we have a singular history that we all are forced to live. I'm sorry, Europe is not the world. The United States is not the world. Canada, New Zealand, and Australia are not the world. And the history of Europe is one corner of the world of history. It's not the history per se. And until we understand what that means, both culturally, socially, religiously, and linguistically, we are still stuck in trying to replicate a distorted notion of what history is and impose on it a theological understanding that leads to destruction. That's what we need to understand. So when we talk about colonization, have these 6 pillars, we need to understand what these 6 pillars mean. And unfortunately, with a few exceptions, we don't teach any of this stuff. Because what we teach is the glorification of Eurocentric history as the only normative history and for you to actually move up on the ladder. We are in a Eurocentric university that produces otherness as it attempts to say we are trying to actually create diversity and inclusiveness. We have no diversity nor inclusiveness. The fact that you poster all kinds of faces of diverse people all over the place is actually an insult over injury. Like if you go around, you look actually the faces of Muslims, Fatima, Khadija, Muhammad, Diallo, Caesar, all over the campus. When you look, wow, this is so diverse. 87% of tenured faculty at UC Berkeley are white faculty. 78% of tenured faculty are white men. There's only 4 Palestinian faculty members on this campus. We never had a single political scientist, black political scientist at UC Berkeley. So don't go around talking about diversity. We have more diversity in the football field than in the classrooms or any part of the administration. For the Diversity and Inclusion Office, they allocated $1 million. For the renovation of the stadium, $335 million. When Asida University bought $335 million for diversity, inclusion, and development of diversity of the campus, then I will respect their statement and their action. $1 million does not even get you a falafel on an institutional capacity. Half of it will go to the vice chancellor for inclusion and diversity, 2 assistants, and then you have 2 wine and cheese gathering at the middle of the campus, and that's about it, what $1 million get you. 335 million get you a full stadium that you fill 60,000 to attend in there. And the thing is that they move around and they think that they're actually making an important point. They give and stand up and they're talking about diversity and inclusion and how we're so sensitive. Like they need a 12-step program just to understand how insensitive for them to talk to us in that way. That's what they need. And they want you to walk and literally apologize that you're talking to them as if you are, again, going to the temple to seek what you call veneration of the pinnacle of whiteness and the pinnacle of meaning. Again, so the 6 elements of genocide. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Jazakallah khair, Dr. Hatem. And one thing that really stuck out to me was how he noted that we have a tendency here at Berkeley that will only celebrate you as a freedom fighter and as an iconic figure after you're dead. While you're living, we'll brand you a terrorist, we'll brand you an extremist, we'll brand you all sorts of different slanders. But when you're dead, we'll benefit from your image, we'll benefit by saying you came to Berkeley, we'll benefit by saying you're an alumni. And there's nothing that epitomizes this more than the experience of Palestinian students and their allies on this campus today. And in fact, we have two panelists who we couldn't even include on the flyer for safety reasons because they're student organizers. And what happens to student organizers on this campus who organize for Palestine and for Islam is that they are slandered online, they are doxxed, they are harassed, they have no sense of safety on this campus or in their homes, as Malak will speak to us today about. And when you go to this university to ask them for any source of help, they'll send you over to the CAP Center. Let's go figure it out. And so this is a reality for so many of the Muslim and Palestinian students today. The stories we've heard today, we've heard Muslims being referred to as ISIS and terrorists by Zionists for just walking by wearing traditional thobes. We've heard of a niqabi sister who's being recorded, like she came to us and told us on a day-to-day basis, people come up to me and record me and take pictures and laugh. Can you imagine this is the so-called progressive UC Berkeley where this is happening? Can you imagine that if a person is too outspoken on this campus, they'll end up on Canary Mission, they'll end up doxxed, and you'll end up on a truck that circles campus calling you an anti-Semite? And so to speak more on this, we have an amazing student organizer, Malak. Malak Afani is a third-year law student at Berkeley Law and the proud daughter of Palestinian immigrants from Abu Ghosh and Al-Khalil. Last year, Afani served as the co-president of the Law Students for Justice in Palestine, where she drafted a pro-BDS bylaw asking all student organizations to pledge their divestment from all entities complicit in apartheid. Afani is also a general member of the Palestinian Youth Movement and a U.S. Campaign for Palestinian Rights coach and fellow, where she continues to mentor Palestinian organizers across the country and supports broader solidarity efforts for liberation. Welcome, Malak.
Before I begin, I just want to say that I went to a very small, very small liberal arts college where I was one of two visibly Muslim students, and I had no access to the level of wisdom and the level of knowledge that the imams and the professors on this campus have. We know that in Islam, that one of the best forms of dhikr, of remembrance of Allah, is La ilaha illallah. There is no God but one. And one of the best forms of dua is Alhamdulillah. All thanks be to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I just want to take a pause. Please join me in giving a round of applause to not only our amazing speakers, but to all these students and the organizers that worked so hard for this event. Even though I am not as funny as Dr. Hatem Bizian, I was asked to talk today about efforts that are being done to repress, censor, and silence student activism and organizing here at Berkeley's campus. But I think that I would do this topic a great disservice if I did not acknowledge the death, the assault caused to the 3 Palestinian college students that occurred this past weekend over our break, who were shot while they were just taking a walk after dinner wearing kuffiyas, as many of us are wearing here tonight. Their injury and the harm and the pain that they have experienced is a reminder of the hatred and the deep anti-Palestinian sentiment that is raging in this country, and symbolizes what organizers have been trying to tell administration for years. That while educational administrations like UC Berkeley's have often laughed off student concerns for threats and incitements to violence by Zionists, that this could lead to real physical harm to pro-Palestinian and or visibly Muslim students. And it is the assault of these 3 students that demonstrates the very real and almost deadly consequences of ignoring such concerns. Since my time here at Berkeley, I've seen the way that sabotaging of student efforts has occurred in 4 different ways. 1, doxing by media. 2, threats to employment and academic careers. 3, legal intimidation. And 4, physical harassment. Last year, Law Students for Justice in Palestine drafted a bylaw that asked student organizations to do 3 things. 1, to divest and support the BDS movement, divest from any entity complicit in supporting apartheid. 2, to not invite Zionist speakers to events and to speak at the law school. And 3, to make sure that board members attended a mandatory Palestine one-on-one training, because solidarity is not in theory, but it is in practice. 23 student organizations adopted the bylaw. Within the first week of the academic semester, they were met with immense backlash from not only the media, but Zionists around the world. There were trucks that were sent to our campus. Some of them displayed student leaders' names on it, calling them Berkeley Law's anti-Semitic class of 2023. Other trucks depicted anti-Semitic pictures of Adolf Hitler, labeling the students that adopted the bylaw as Nazis, with a link where you could send them an email with hate speech, resulting in their inboxes being flooded with thousands of hate emails a day. These trucks with student leaders' names on it were not just driven all around the Bay Area, but they were sent to the home addresses of student organizers themselves. My apartment last year, there was a truck that stood outside for a week straight. Another student organizer who had her name on the truck had the truck sent to her home state of Texas, near her family and her loved ones, where it was driven around the state, declaring her an anti-Semite. But this was not enough. The Zionists also got billboards, which cost around $8,000 to $14,000, to be plastered around our home addresses with the quote, "You don't have to go to law school to know that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism." I had 4 billboards placed on each side of my apartment. These tactics try to scare students into silence by threatening the safety of them and their loved ones. But they are nothing but cowardly attempts, and if anything, a testament to how embarrassing it is that these Zionists will go to great financial gains, breaking their wallets and their morals, and spending upwards of $14,000 to cover up genocide. In the law school itself, not only were Zionist students recording our conversations and events and sending them to media to be published, putting us on Canary Mission, my face was pinned to their national Twitter account, but professors and experts in the legal field were calling for us not to be hired. Last year, a Northwestern law professor urged judges to consider to refuse students that adopted the bylaw for clerkships, a call that was heard and resulted in not only our very own law students being interrogated about their opinion on BDS in job interviews, but resulting in an LSJP member losing their job because of her Canary Mission. Professor Stephen Solomon at Berkeley Law published an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal titled, quote, "Don't hire my anti-Semitic law students," end quote, and stated that it is time for the adults to take over, urging legal employers to ask students if they support discriminatory bylaws or other acts and resolutions blaming Jews and Israelis for the Hamas massacre, or Hamas massacre as the Zionists call it. Do you want your clients represented by someone who condones these monstrous crimes, he said? Instead of Berkeley Law Administration condemning the fact that one of their very own professors was aggressively trying to harm students' ability to provide for their families, Dean Urban Tremorinsky decided to further add fuel to the fire by demanding that any legal journal that adopted the bylaw would not only be denied academic credit due to his belief that the bylaw and forcing people to go to a Palestine 101 training counted as political indoctrination, but that they could lose the licensing of the journal and funding to support it. If legal journals wanted to appeal his decision, they could submit a Google form response in which only the dean, as the sole decision maker, without any input from other faculty and committees, would decide if that journal could receive its credit. They were also asked to prove if the journal had any pedagogical relation to Palestine. So the dean asked the Berkeley Law Journal of Middle Eastern and Islamic Law if their journal had anything to do with Palestine. The dean's actions are a testament to the way the Palestine exception to free speech is alive and well. When the Women of Color Collective adopted a clause in their constitution denouncing white supremacy and settler colonialism years ago, the school was silent and did not find it a violation of free speech. When California Law Review, one of the nation's most prestigious law journals, mandated diversity, equity, and inclusion training, the school did not dare claim political indoctrination. Recently, some LSJP members spearheaded an initiative asking journals to adopt a bylaw unanimously condemning white supremacy, to see if the dean would then count that as a violation of school policy. To which the dean admitted that it was okay to have a bylaw condemning white supremacy, but that a bylaw specifically condemning Zionism was not. To him and to the UC administration, pro-Palestinian speech condemning Zionism was the only thing that could trigger school policy, and said that any bylaw calling for anti-apartheid action was equated to anti-Israel sentiment and could not be tolerated. He concluded by telling students, quote, "This is not a democracy." The dean's dictatorship and abuse of administrative control and power to silence student organizations has not only been ineffective at stopping solidarity with the pro-Palestinian movement for liberation, but has come back to bite the school. This week, it was announced that Brandeis University's Center for Human Rights is suing UC Berkeley for long-standing, unchecked spread of anti-Semitism caused by the, quote, exclusionary bylaw and, quote, pro-Hamas rallies occurring on campus, in reference to the 3,000 plus students that walked out of their classrooms to stand against genocide. While this lawsuit is another example of an attempt to demonize pro-Palestinian organizers, its outcome will force this administration and others like them to make their biased views on Palestine explicitly clear to the public. The silencing of Palestinian and pro-Palestinian organizers is not new. And the tactics used by these Zionist cowards are the same ones weaponized generation after generation. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that one of the greatest forms of jihad, of sacred struggle, is speaking truth in the face of oppression. They say that the old will die and the young will forget, but we know that not to be true, and we see it in the walkouts held nationally, the disruptions in malls and on the Bay Bridge, the passage of resolutions in city councils, and the protests around the world. Our Palestinian resistance fighters that are in prison, who face the ultimate form of censorship, have found ways to continue to serve the movement for liberation, whether it is through hiding messages in books to be passed around for the outside, or leaving copies of poems in covert locations. They have continued to persevere and demonstrate the samud, the steadfastness that we must all embody, and that we will all continue to embody at this campus until Palestine is free from the river to the sea. Thank you.
Thank you, Malak, for sharing the experiences that Palestinian students and their allies have faced on this campus. But as Malak mentioned, that despite all of these efforts and all of these attempts to silence us and to marginalize us, we've seen this year unprecedented numbers come out in support of Palestine. We've seen walkouts that have flooded the UC Berkeley campus in support of Palestine. We've seen classmates who might have not even knew the difference between Palestine and Pakistan only a few months ago come out in support of Palestine today. And so speaking on some of the newer efforts to support Palestine, we have Banan. Banan is a PhD student here at UC Berkeley, and she's part of the newly formed Graduate Students for Justice in Palestine. GSJP was formed in this crucial moment to highlight the horrors of the genocide and to hold the people responsible for it accountable, starting with the University of California, which invests in weapon manufacturing companies through BlackRock, companies that have facilitated this latest attempt to eliminate the Palestinian people. Please join me in welcoming Banan.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I apologize for my lateness. Thank you for introducing me, that nice introduction. Like he said, my name is Banan, and I'm a graduate student here and also part of the Graduate Students for Justice in Palestine. Today, I was asked to speak about how academic institutions like UC Berkeley uphold settler colonial entities and how students have been at the forefront of fighting back. When I was thinking about how I would approach this topic, I was thinking in the grand framework and the historical, as that is the easiest and most tangible starting point. To begin by telling you that academic institutions and many of the disciplines that formed went hand in hand with colonial power, whether it was anthropology, for example, and its formation as a literal facilitator for colonialism, and its attempt to know, learn, and observe to allow power to then conquer, divide, and rule. Or the very intricate ways in which science has been used to create the tools within which settler colonialism can practice its ultimate goal of complete elimination of the other, as Oppenheimer reminds us of our very own university. But I decided that I will not start there, although I kind of did, because that is easy. To trace this, to begin there, sets me up for the fastest rebuttal of that is in the past. Although I'm sure the people of Hiroshima and Nagasaki dealing with its ripple effects until today may beg to differ. But still, we come up against this notion of temporality, that time changes and reforms and institutions learn from their mistakes. And although that is a very lazy argument, we will let them have it and begin elsewhere. So instead, I want to begin with the subtleties, the everyday, the minute ways that academia and academic institutions not only uphold, but produce the conditions in which colonialism can keep doing what it's always been doing. I want to begin with land acknowledgements. We all know them. We see them sitting at the foot of many email signatures, especially in this university, from people who run the university to professors who teach in it. Many times, we begin major events with these land acknowledgements. Sometimes we couple it with a moment of silence for the indigenous people who used to reside on the lands in which we are studying. But what do these land acknowledgements mean? Or even more importantly, what do they do, or in this case, not do? Berkeley's website says this about land acknowledgements. It says, to recognize the land is an expression of gratitude and appreciation to those whose territories you reside on, and a way of honoring the indigenous people who have been living and working on the land from time immemorial. It is important to understand the long-standing history that has brought you to reside on the land, and to seek to understand your place within that history. Land acknowledgements do not exist in a past tense or historical context. Colonialism is a current ongoing process, and we need to build our mindfulness of our present participation. It is also worth noting that acknowledging the land is indigenous protocol, end quote. What do we get from this? You see, land acknowledgements is the pat on the back, the well done you, for remembering that we are standing on Olon land. What does standing on land mean? It means, when stripped down to its core, that the land was someone else's. And it was stolen from the indigenous rightful inhabitants of that land, and taken to the benefit of the colonial entity that stole it and the institutions built on it. To acknowledge the land in this instance acknowledges this relationship, and then it ends there. It places land dispossession, colonialism, annihilation as something in the past to be commemorated, honored, and acknowledged with gratitude and appreciation. What does the ending statement tell us, though? It is also worth noting that acknowledging the land is indigenous protocol. Worth noting, and this is what I mean when I say we have to engage with the subtleties of the everyday of colonialism. What does worth noting do? To need to worth, it is the need, one second, I'm sorry. What does worth noting do? It is the need to justify a previous action. And what are they trying to justify? The present participation? Or the ongoing current process, the current ongoing process of colonialism? Or is it a subtle admission that they also know that expressions of gratitude and appreciation are simply what they are at face value, expressions? Expressions that are not backed by action. Indigenous scholars tell us what they really want from land acknowledgements, and that it is they want a clear statement that the land needs to be restored to the indigenous nation or nations that previously had sovereignty over that land. Those who are acknowledging or using land acknowledgements must reveal a sincere commitment to respecting and enhancing indigenous sovereignty. But that is, of course, a conversation for another time. I bring up land acknowledgements to show how settler colonialism operates in the everyday, in the meaningless gestures not backed by actions. Some of you might think that is harsh, that this is questioning intention when one should not. But what I'm doing here is answering a different question. How can the very blatant genocide we are witnessing today not be mentioned in the many classes students are taking at this institution that prides itself on land acknowledgements? Not acknowledged in the several emails where Chancellor Christ speaks of her injured heart and pain, but never mentions the thousands killed through the facilitation of investments by the very entity that pays her paychecks. The erasure in the statements are the subtleties that I speak of. The investments, not so subtle. Both are actions by these academic institutions, and both uphold settler colonialism. Both are a continuation of the very formula of elimination, one that erases and eliminates and then attempts to find within itself to be heartbroken and appreciative. Another subtlety, and also not so subtle, is the way in which academics engage with the colonized. Eagerly discussing Fanon, some even mentioning his stance on resisting colonialism and lauding it, while others dissect what do the scholars of decolonization is not a metaphor actually mean. Yet when the genocide in Gaza started, they implored their students to be nuanced, to not let their emotions take the better of them when they are thinking of the conflict. The term nuanced here is loaded. Nuance asks one to analyze the multiple layers, asks them to carefully analyze and take into full consideration before reaching a conclusion. At the surface, it is an act to be lauded, the pinnacle of human thought. In action, as we have seen with regards to this genocide, here at the university and universities across the nation, when professors ask their students to be nuanced about this genocide without condemning it, they are asking them to abstract the violence they see, to abstract that violence and place it within a broad board of theories they can analyze with, grapple with, unpack, dissect, sit with, but it does not offer an ending to that process. That lack of ending is lauded as nuance. Yet we have here at Berkeley professors who demand of their students nuance, a chancellor who pleads with her students to practice respectful dialogue, and these very professors, that very chancellor, signs a letter in which Palestinian men are described as sex-hungry terrorists and rapists, a letter in which the term brutal appears several times in connection to them, in which many of the now debunked claims reek of Islamophobia and xenophobia. Over 300 professors signed this letter. All of them are at Berkeley. Christ was one of them, in her personal capacity, as she has said. This rhetoric of Islamophobia, xenophobia, the equivalence of Muslim men to terrorism, does not appear in a vacuum. And this is where nuance becomes useful. Because nuance tells us to engage with history to understand why such a rhetoric can easily be used and justified. The war on terror has conditioned them, and this is history again, but also current. The war on terror has conditioned these professors to feel emboldened to be able to readily associate Muslim men with these descriptions, and in extension, brown men, and in the US, black men, with these descriptions, and not fear repercussions. These descriptions were born from the interactions between academic institutions and colonial ideologies. And these descriptions contextualize the loud silence these academic institutions have today in the face of the genocide we are witnessing, and that is facilitated by these very institutions. What the university has not done, however, is it has not broken the curious minds of the students that honor their institutions with their presence. Berkeley prides itself, actually brands itself, as the University of the Free Speech Movement and the South Africa Divestment Campaign, which saw students hold a 44-day sit-in to pressure their university to divest from apartheid. However, Berkeley is the very institution, because it seems to have a short memory, to laud their students for doing, However, Berkeley has a short memory, because what they lauded their students for doing before, what they have branded the university on, what they try to market so they can get their students to come, what they lauded their students for doing before, they reprimand their students for doing today. And yet, in spite of this, and in spite of repercussions, thousands of students have shown up to student-organized and led actions on this very campus. Thousands of students have walked out across the nation. Thousands of students are standing up to doxing, they're standing up to university repercussions, they are standing up for the disbandment of pro-Palestinian organizations. These students know that these institutions hide behind that very performance. They know that these institutions are structured to discipline, to teach students that their worth and priority is in their ability to produce. However, the students protesting nationwide today also understand the weight and responsibility of what it means to be an ethical knowledge producer and an ethical knowledge consumer. Understanding that with the stroke of a hand, a pen can liberate or condemn, create legible life or expunge it, and by showing up and standing up for the Palestinians and oppression everywhere, these students are living up to that responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Banan, for that, and for showing that despite the efforts, support for Palestine on this campus has never been stronger. And we truly see the effects of our movements. We see the fact that we have so many people here today, we have a full house on a Wednesday night, only a few days before finals, is a testament that there's hope for this university. There's hope for the students to change this university. And there's hope that just as students previously changed the policies in regards to apartheid South Africa, we will change the policies in regards to apartheid settler colonial Israel, bi'idhnihi ta'ala. And so last, but definitely not least, we have our keynote speaker of tonight, Sami Hamidi. Brother Sami Hamidi is the managing director of International Interest, a global risk and intelligence company. He advises government institutions, global companies, and NGOs on the geopolitical dynamics of Europe and the Middle East and North Africa region. He has significant expertise in advising on commercial issues related to volatile political environments, and he's a frequent guest on Al Jazeera, both Arabic and English, mashallah, Sky News, TRT World, and other outlets. Please join me in welcoming Brother Sami Hamidi.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I know I'm on borrowed time. I know it's past 8 o'clock. I know you've been sitting here for ages. I promise not to go on too long. And if I am, just tap your tables like this, and I'll know that I have to finish, inshallah. First of all, thank you very much. Thank you for having me. Thank you to the organizers. Thank you to Hull's, these things that keep my throat going, alhamdulillah, from event after event. They've been wonderful. And thank you to the wonderful weather in this part of the world that is on the other side of the world, that's 13 hours and a half away, that's not near anything, it's so isolated by the Pacific Ocean. But somehow, as Dr. Hatem said earlier, they believe that they are the center of the world. I can confirm, coming all the way from London, that you are most certainly not the center of the world. But in any case, the thing that I wanted to focus on, a lot of the points have already been touched upon by the previous speaker, and that's the curse of going last. But there is a point that I really do want to emphasize, which is the role that all of you have played in bringing about the shift amongst the stance of the policymakers. And I want to give you the exact proofs of that. Because one of the biggest crises that settler colonialism has is the increasing awareness of the public of exactly the strategies that settler colonialism actually deploys. And one thing that is worth noting is that while settler colonialism appears today to be strong, particularly when we look at Israel, the reality is that it is on its dying breath, and I'll explain exactly what I mean. Less than 90 years ago, perhaps 90 years ago, this world, the Muslim world at least, and indeed the rest of the non-white world, was under official colonization. France was officially and legally in Algeria. The British were officially and legally in Egypt, India, and other parts. The French were in Indochina, or what they call Indochina. The Italians were in Libya. Colonization was the foundation of the global order of that time. So much so that in 1945, when France was liberated from Nazi Germany, and the Allies got together to write a wonderful document called the Geneva Convention, UN Declaration of Human Rights, in which it says every man is born free and every people have the right to self-determination. My maternal relatives believed that this applied to them in Algeria, so they took to the streets in Galma, Kharata, and in Stif, demanding their own independence and their own freedom. And France celebrated in Paris, but was so horrified that Algerians demanded the same that they massacred 30,000 Algerians in 1 week. The French say they killed 12,000. Algerians say they killed 50,000. I've gone for the middle, 30,000. The French said that after killing 30,000, they all patted themselves on the back and they said, we've taught them such a bloody lesson that they will never dare to resist us again. That we are safe now in Algeria. We taught them the high price, that they must stop speaking Arabic, that we can continue to line up the women and pull off their hijab, that we can continue to ban Arabic from the schools, and we can continue to civilize them by stopping them from believing in Allah and His Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. At that time, many believed it to be such a horrible disaster that it had set back the liberation movement for many years. But Allah had written that only 17 years later, the French would be kicked out. And the Algerians took to the streets and they chanted, Ya Muhammad Mabruk Alik, Al Jazair Rajat Lik. Oh Muhammad, congratulations, Algeria has been returned to you. And the French to this day are so upset at that statement because they're saying, how can 132 years of civilization mission, how can 132 years of us teaching them how great our French culture is, why do they hold on to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam? So settler colonialism at that point, the French didn't leave because they suddenly woke up and they said, we feel really sorry for these Algerians. We've done horrible things to them. Let's get up and leave. They were kicked out. Italians were kicked out of Libya. The British were kicked out of Egypt. They were kicked out of India. The French were kicked out of Vietnam. They were kicked out. And the reason that colonization doesn't exist in its official form today is not because the colonizers had suddenly an epiphany of conscience, but because the people, the victims of settler colonialism, they're not weak, they're strong. They took to the streets, they strove and they exerted their efforts and they kicked out the colonizers. When settler colonialism then came up with a new strategy, which was we can't be there officially and physically. We need to find proxies. We need people willing to work with us. People willing to ensure that people don't choose. People willing to ensure that they don't allow their populations to dictate their self-determination. We need people who are willing to give us the contracts, not to their own companies and to their own people. We need to entice them. We need to find people to work with us. And so we entered a period of semi-independence in which colonizers could not stay in the countries, but we remained economically dependent on them. And that gave rise later to governments that were much more inclined towards preserving an oppressive status quo than facilitating and continuing the process of the liberation of the people. A new form of settler colonialism, I call it. In 2011, in Sidi Bouzid, where my father hails from, where our ancestral home is, on the village next to us, a man called Muhammad Bouazizi went to the market to try to sell his goods, and the police wouldn't let him. So he decided to burn himself in protest. He said, forget it. Death is better to me than life in this country. And it ignited an Arab Spring in which the people took to the streets and they toppled these invincible authoritarian regimes. Once again, people taking to the streets to defy a global order, and it sparked the Arab Spring. In sparking the Arab Spring, the reaction of the governments of the authoritarian regimes was such, they were terrified that the people, now that they were asserting their freedom, they required much harder repression in order to try to bring them back into that Pandora's box. We needed to shut this threat. You look at the region today and you'll see chaos. And some of you will think that chaos means failure and disaster. But what chaos actually means is, it means that the strength that was maintaining the status quo for so long is no longer strong enough to maintain it. And the chaos means that that power has been weakened. And now there is a competition to see which is the new order. The harder the repression, the reaction, it's a reaction to the strength of the freedom and the spirit of the people banging on the door to freedom. The reason why I say all that is because it relates directly to what we're seeing happening in Palestine today. The week before October 7th, Netanyahu stood at the United Nations and he held up a map of his ideal version of settler colonialism. He held up a map in which he said, this is the future of the Middle East. And if you notice on the map, there was no Palestine mentioned in it at all. In the same breath, he said that normalization of ties with Saudi Arabia will be the greatest deal since the end of the Cold War. Then he sat with Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and they discussed the gas pipeline, and the Israelis started taunting the Palestinians, saying, look, your Sultan now is sitting with us as well for the first time since he came to power in 2003. Yusuf Al-Utaiba, the UAE ambassador to Washington here, told a think tank 2 months ago that normalization has brought absolutely no benefits for the Palestinians whatsoever. And now it's on the future countries that will normalize to think about the Palestinians. But let me tell you something, how fun and exciting. Do you know how many flights we have today between Abu Dhabi and Tel Aviv? Do you know how much our trade is today? So when Netanyahu returned to Tel Aviv, he was absolutely certain that this was the moment in which he could finally achieve his dream of expanding those borders and annexing more territory. So the Israelis began to amass their troops near the Jenin refugee camp in the West Bank 1 week before October 7th. Netanyahu was getting ready. It was imminent. The Saudi Crown Prince had told Fox News that we are getting closer every single day. Reuters had leaked that the Saudis were no longer demanding a Palestinian state. The idea was that normalization was becoming increasingly imminent. Netanyahu said, now is the time to go into the West Bank. Let's build up our forces. Nobody will come for the Palestinians. The Palestinian cause is dying. Everybody is curled up in their beds crying about it. They have no hope. It's finished. Let's go into the Jenin refugee camp. Let's go into the West Bank. Let's annex that territory. October 7th happens. We're in America, so we'll skip it. When Blinken goes to Tel Aviv in the first week after October 7th, he makes a very interesting statement. He says, I'm not here as the US Secretary of State, I'm here as a Jew. Blinken seemed to forget that the Holocaust never happened in the Middle East. Spanish Inquisition never happened in the Middle East. The pogroms in Warsaw never happened in the Middle East. The persecution of the Jews never happened in the Middle East. Blinken forgot that when Isabella massacred and kicked out the Jews, they came to the Muslim lands. She forgot that after the Holocaust, the Jews fled, they came to the Muslim lands. She forgot that Europe treated, they were so anti-Semitic that the Balfour Declaration itself, that many people say paved the way for Israel, the Balfour Declaration was because the English could not stand the Jews. They called them aliens. They said, go anywhere, go to Argentina, go to Uganda, just get out of this country. And the single Jewish representative in parliament actually stood up rejecting the Balfour Declaration because he knew it was an anti-Semitic declaration. When the Jews fled anti-Semitic Europe, they came to us Muslims because Allah commanded us to respect them, to show them love, to show them affection, and to allow them to live by their laws. Allah taught us what the Europeans have not been able to teach themselves. So when the Jewish refugees turn up on the boat and they unfurl the poster, please don't do to us what the Europeans did to us. We told them, as the Sultan of the Ottomans told them many years ago, come, 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 these horrible Europeans, what they do. These barbaric Europeans, these anti-Semitic Europeans, we are superior to them in values. And they came and they lived next to us side by side. Blinken forgot all of that and he came to Tel Aviv and said, I'm here as a Jew. But Blinken's visit, he was only supposed to go to Tel Aviv and come straight back to Washington. But when he went to Tel Aviv, he told the journalists, we're not going back to Washington. I've just come out of a meeting with Netanyahu, and now I have to go to Saudi Arabia, to Jordan, to Egypt, to Qatar, and the other regional countries. And the journalist said, why are we going there? What happened? What did they talk about? What is so serious that Blinken has to go to the regional countries? And Washington Post reported the next day that he went to visit them in order to ask for help to tamp down on public anger. Blinken and Netanyahu sat in a war room to talk about you. Blinken and Netanyahu sat in a war room to discuss how to get you to be quiet. Blinken and Netanyahu sat in a war room to seek assistance to get you to be quiet because you refused to be silent. You refused to be quiet. You roared and you shouted for Palestine, and Blinken scrambled to try to get you to be quiet. Bravo, everyone. Well done. When Blinken went to the regional powers, some of them agreed to help, some of them didn't. The Saudi Crown Prince said no problem. He asked the chief Imam of Mecca, Abdurrahman al-Sudais, to tell everybody that make dua for Gaza, but don't talk about it because it's a fitna and it might turn you against your ruler. The khutbah in Medina al-Munawwara, the Prophet's mosque, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, the Imam said, make dua for Gaza, but don't let these people like Sami al-Hamdi come and turn you against your ruler by talking about Gaza. Don't talk about it. Those who are going for Umrah in December in future, you'll be receiving a WhatsApp very soon if you haven't already. Groups have been told not to allow kafirs, not to allow Free Palestine stickers, and not to talk about Palestine. Bin Salman said, no problem, it's fine. On the night when the internet was cut off and Israel began its ground invasion, Bin Salman said to Blinken, I've got this, Shakira's coming on this night. She's shaking her hips, inshallah. When Turki al-Sheikh, descendant of Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab, ironically, was told, let's cancel these events. Let's cancel, it doesn't make sense. Gaza is being bombarded. He said, name me one football match that's been cancelled because of a political event. How can you ask me to cancel Shakira? But Blinken found resistance in Egypt and in Jordan. So Biden came up with an idea to try to get the Egyptians and the Jordanians to accept. On the 20th of October, he proposed a bill to Congress in which they would dedicate money to give to Egypt and Jordan to, quote, take in the Palestinians. Biden said to them, please just take them. Let Israel ethnically cleanse Gaza, and I promise I will take care of the budget. I will give you money for the tents and the food and the like. Please let Netanyahu ethnically cleanse Gaza. But Sisi was concerned about popular opinion. Sisi, who had banned protests for so many years, suddenly allowed them because he said, I'm struggling here. I need you to come out for me, but please don't protest against me. Just protest, please, only against the Israelis, please. And then he turned on the cameras to Blinken and he gave an excellent 40-minute lecture to Blinken saying, you said you came as a Jew. We've never persecuted the Jews. Sisi said it. He's not the best of individuals, but bravo. He did a decent job in lambasting Blinken. We'll give it to him, that one. At this point, you're all still shouting ethnic cleansing, genocide. You're retweeting Mu'taz Azaiza, you're retweeting Muhammad al-Kurd, you're retweeting Plestia, you're retweeting all of these various different accounts. Suddenly, everybody is starting to wake up. I'm seeing in London, in East London, oi Dave, are you seeing what they're doing in Palestine, mate? It's oh my God, mate, I can't believe this. They're killing babies, mate. Like, this is mad. I always supported Israel, but I can't believe it's the Israelis doing this. And Steve told him, yeah, bro, it's just... A lady here, a girl here in LA posted a video saying that, you know, I lived all my life in a Zionist environment. But now TikTok, wama adrak. My sisters begged me to open a TikTok account. They begged me. They said, Sammy, you have to be up to date with what's happening. I said, why would I waste my time on TikTok? Now I spend my time on TikTok before I go to sleep every night, reposting and retweeting every Palestinian content. May Allah reward Zainab, my sister, who told me to get TikTok. Instagram, 6 months ago, I wasn't even using my Instagram account. I said, why would I post pictures of myself? All I see is people, they post pictures of their food, and all they do is they post pictures of themselves. What am I going to post? They tell me, you idiot, you don't have to post. Just retweet and share stuff on your stories, what people are posting. I did not know what a mighty force Instagram has been in shifting that public opinion. Now, every night, alongside TikTok, I'm on Instagram looking on people's stories. I learn how to share. I learn how to, you know, screenshot and cut quickly and put it on as well, and how to take other people's ideas and put the picture as my own. So this social media thing is now getting higher and higher. So much so that on the 28th of October, Biden announces for the first time that Palestinians must remain in Gaza. They must not be displaced from Gaza. Biden buckled. Biden buckled. Biden went from trying to financially assist ethnic cleansing to coming out and saying, and I thought Biden was lying because Biden said that he saw beheaded babies, and the White House was so concerned about the lie, they came out and said, guys, he didn't actually see it. He didn't. It's Netanyahu who told him and he repeated it. You know, come on, this is a guy who doesn't know where to get off on the stage. So please, just bear in mind in terms of how you guys, just relax. So John Kirby came out and confirmed it all. And then Blinken came up with a genius marketing strategy. Blinken went back to Tel Aviv on a second tour. And according to Axios, the Israeli paper, this isn't my words, Blinken said to Netanyahu that the atrocities that are being shared by you, that the disgraceful acts being shared by you, that the ethnic cleansing being shown to the world through you, that the genocide that's being committed and being shown to the world through you here is making it such that the US might not be able to support your military operation for months. He told Netanyahu, according to Axios, the exact phrase, help me to help you, bro. Come on. You can't ethnically cleanse and do genocide in this such brazen manner. Why are your ministers talking about annihilating Gaza? Hear my idea. I have an idea. It's called the humanitarian pause. Now, instead of bombing them and killing them and committing the genocide, we still do the ethnic cleansing, but we remarket it. So instead of saying that we're ethnically driving them out of their homes, we say that we give them 4 hours to leave their homes through humanitarian corridors under Israeli protection. What do you think, Netanyahu? Netanyahu turned around and he said to him, I need to know first that this isn't a plot by Biden, because we think they're united, but they're not. Allah says they're united, but qulubuhum shatta, the hearts are divided. I need to know that this is the trick by Biden to lure me into a permanent ceasefire. Blinken said, I promise you, I don't want the ceasefire. I want to see ethnic cleansing. I want to see the Palestinians out. I want Gaza to be annexed. Please, Netanyahu, if it continues like this, then these students here in Berkeley are going to keep shouting. They're going to keep talking about it. They're going to force us to drop in the polls, and they're going to allow Trump to come back into power. These Berkeley students are so annoying. They keep talking. They keep shouting. They keep sharing. They keep doing sit-ins. They keep protesting. They do walkouts. They're annoying me, Netanyahu. Netanyahu, help me to help you. Let's make it so that we split them so they debate whether it's a humanitarian pause or not. But Berkeley students are smarter than that. They didn't believe a single word of it. Do you see how you're shifting the policy stances now of Blinken? Blinken, who had banned the State Department from using the word ceasefire and pause, was now using ceasefire and pause. I ask you, did he do it because of the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman? Did he do it because of the UAE's President Mohammed bin Zayed? Did he even do it because of the Turkish President Erdogan? Did he do it because of any government? He did it because of you. You made the policymakers at the highest level buckle. You should celebrate that. That's because of you, because of your efforts, and why you should keep going. So they do the humanitarian pause, and we see the horrendous images of a Nakba taking place. The Nakba of 1948 was 700,000. We're seeing a Nakba of 1.7 million, and we saw them go through those humanitarian corridors or the like. Netanyahu thinks that now that CNN and New York Times are reporting about the humanitarian corridor, things are going to get better. But the problem with the IDF and the Israelis and with settler colonialism is that they look down on everybody else, as Dr. Hatem and the other speakers were saying earlier. Allah himself says in the Quran sometimes that when they abuse the people, ذلك بأنهم قالوا ليس علينا في الأميين سبيلا. It's because we have you can't blame us for abusing these unlettered, these backwards people. This is the attitude of settler colonialism. So when they're supposed to be talking about humanitarian corridors, the IDF goes and bombs the Jabalia refugee camp, killing 400 Palestinians and claiming that they went after one Hamas commander. There's no proof they killed the Hamas commander, but they shrugged their shoulders and they said, so what? We killed 400 Palestinians. The IDF admitting it was so horrific that the Zionist presenter at the CNN was stunned and forgot even to ask his next question. He said, yo, bro, you're not supposed to admit this publicly. New York Times, even our IDF admitted it. They felt it was such bad PR for Israel that they said, no, don't report that the IDF admitted it. Say an explosion happened. IDF, this is how you do PR for ethnic cleansing. CNN said, no, New York Times, you're wrong. Don't say explosion. Say a blast happened. IDF, this is how you do PR. They said whatever, as long as we massacre them and ethnically cleanse them or the like. And then another dynamic starts emerging, which is that inside Israel itself, the families of the hostages start getting upset. What's Netanyahu doing? Why is he carpet bombing Gaza when our families are still there? Why is he annihilating and flattening it? Doesn't he care about us? And when Hamas released those two elderly hostages, you remember the one who turned around, the elderly lady, she turns around, she goes, Shalom Alaikum. Times of Israel reported that Netanyahu and the IDF were, quote, annoyed and frustrated at the release of the hostages. Think about it. Annoyed and frustrated at the release of his own people because, quote, he was concerned that it would dull their ardor and fervor for a new military operation. Think about it. He's so desperate to ethnically cleanse that he would rather see his own population killed. And that's why the families of the hostages went and they protested in front of the Knesset. So Ben Gvir, the right-wing ally, turns around and he says, we're going to pass a law. Any protest that undermines the military operation carries a prison sentence. More protesters came to join the families of the hostages. They went to Netanyahu's house. Ben Gvir set the Israeli settlers. They went and attacked their own people to tell them, get out, get out. We want the lands in Gaza. We want to take those homes. Stop protesting and asking for hostage exchange. Then Netanyahu, who hadn't attended any of the funerals of the hostages, said this is becoming a crisis. More and more Israelis are taken to the streets demanding the release of hostages. So he arranges for his wife to go meet them. It goes very badly. They tell his wife that your husband doesn't care about us at all. Then he says, okay, let's bring them to the parliament, to the Knesset. Let them talk with Israeli officials. They try to do a video where they show that they care about the hostages, but the viral video is a brother of one of the hostages who says, how can you talk about annihilating Gaza when my brother is there? Netanyahu is humiliated by his own people. Then Ben Gvir, when he realizes now that Netanyahu is buckling, that he's concerned over the public opinion amongst the Israelis, and concerned that Biden now, according to CNN, Biden is telling him that because of the bombardment of the atrocities on social media, because these students of Berkeley keep sharing, because Sami from London keeps sharing, because the brothers and sisters in Indonesia keep sharing, because the whole world is now sharing the content, and because we're falling in the polls as a result, we might not be able to support you anymore. You no longer have months, you only have a matter of weeks, which leads Eli Cohen, the Israeli foreign minister, to come out and say we probably have 2 weeks before the international pressure comes on us. Ben Gvir has an idea. He's desperate. He says, Netanyahu is buckling. Let me meet the families of the hostages. So he meets them in the Knesset. And he realizes that they're very angry with him and they're shouting at him. So he does something in which he goes to one of the family members and he tries to hug them like that. And the family member's like, whoa, you know, like that. And that's the picture that goes viral. He's again humiliated. The point I want to make here is this. When the humanitarian pause becomes a truce with hostage exchange, and bear in mind, it's expected to expire in less than an hour. So I've been looking on Twitter eagerly to see whether it's going to be renewed or not. And inshallah, it's renewed. But the point here I want to make is this. We went from no talk of ceasefire and no talk of a pause. We went from full-on support for ethnic cleansing and for genocide. We went from Biden saying we'll give money for Palestinians to go into Egypt and Jordan, to talking about a humanitarian pause, to then a truce with hostage exchange. I ask you, did Netanyahu want to sign a truce to exchange the hostages? No. So what made him do it? It's you. You made Netanyahu buckle. When the Telegraph in the United Kingdom, which is a right-wing paper, comes out and publishes a full spread that TikTok needs to be banned, the reason they're saying TikTok needs to be banned is because you're too loud. It's because you're forcing the algorithm gets excited at popular posts. So when it sees hashtag Palestine, it says, just share it, just share it, just share it. So it starts going on the home pages of people who've never heard about Palestine, Israel before. When Elon Musk took over Twitter, I was deeply upset. I said, Ya lahwi, inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Now I think it's the greatest blessing we could have possibly had. Because what he did was, he removed a lot of the restraints, and he added, you know that home page where it shows you accounts that you don't follow, and the algorithm populates that page with popular posts. What it meant was, because all of you were talking about Palestine, that homepage only had Palestinian content. That homepage only had issues about Palestine. It only had Palestinian voices, so much so that Ian Bremmer, I work in the political risk consultancy industry. What it means is I help corporates to save money when there's political crisis. Don't judge me, it's good money. But the point is that when Ian Bremmer, who is considered one of the foremost analysts in this industry, unjustifiably so in my opinion, put out a tweet where he said, I've never seen so much disinformation about Palestine and Israel in my entire life. What he meant was, I've never seen so many Palestinian voices. I've never seen so much noise about Palestine. I've never seen so many people talk about it. I've never seen so many people share it. I've never seen so many people change their minds about it. Why? How? What's going on over here? And that's why one of the things about the polls, and some of you might be thinking, what do the polls mean with regards to Biden? Biden is behind Trump in 5 of the 6 swing states. I think it's 6 swing states. You guys know better than me. We have a lovely, elegant first past the post system. Your electoral system is a bit funny. But the point is, the pollsters who put out that poll made this interesting observation. They said that usually what affects the polls is economy. It's the economy, stupid. That was the mantra. We're just beasts that like to eat and feed our bellies and have money in our pockets. They said the shocking thing about this poll is what's driving the numbers down is not just the economy. What's driving the numbers down is people are genuinely upset at Biden's stance with regards to what's happening in Israel because of the impact on social media. They said we're stunned that it's being affected by a conflict where US troops aren't even officially on the ground. Usually it's about our boys are getting killed abroad while we're in Iraq and Afghanistan. Now this time there are no soldiers there and still the polls are dropping, which shows the impact that you've made. When Rashida Tlaib got censored, I had a friend of mine come to me and say, Sami, you keep talking about the optimistic side of our efforts. Hi Rashida, she got censored. Say something, Kazi. I told him, I'll tell you what I say, Kazi. 252 Congress people voted against Rashida, yes. But have you ever seen 192 defy the Israeli line and defy the Israeli lobby? Israel is losing its influence. When AIPAC offers 20 million to somebody to tell him drop out the Senate race and run against Rashida, and they do it in such a clumsy way that it gets leaked for all of us to see, and the candidate comes out without fear and says, yes, they offered 20 million. The monopoly is breaking. They're losing the control. You are breaking it. They are spending millions to control it. You broke it for free. You broke it for free. Put your hand up if you got paid. You didn't. They spent millions. I remember I did a podcast with Yaqeen Institute. You'd expect that the adverts for the video would be Islamic things. The advert was pro-IDF. They were spending money so much that they were putting it in. I was listening to Shuraim in Quran. IDF advert came up before Shuraim's voice did. I thought, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Wow. Even before Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. It shows you how concerned they are that when the highest levels of state are meeting with social media, why are they shadow banning accounts? Whose accounts are they shadow banning? It's yours. Who are they restricting on social media? It's you. Why are they pressuring you here at university? I'm listening to the accounts and keep going, keep doing what you're doing. Don't let them silence you. But why are they coming after you here in the uni space? Because they recognize you have a power. They recognize the potential of that power. They recognize if you keep going, you will keep making them buckle. They recognize that you have a power that needs to be repressed. And you might be feeling the repression is very hard. But remember, repression correlates directly to the power that it's repressing. The harder the power, the harder the repression. The more powerful you are, the more powerful the repression. You're all talking about powerful repression. It's because you're powerful and you are making a difference. Some of you might say that we're not producing the outcome that we want, but that's not the point I want to make here today. The point I want to make here today is the reason Netanyahu and Blinken don't have their ideal scenario is because you prevented that ideal scenario from emerging. So the logic follows that if you keep going as you are, if you keep being loud, if you keep shouting, if you keep roaring, if you keep campaigning, if you keep raising your voices, the logic follows that if they went from no pause, no ceasefire to humanitarian pause to a truce, the logic follows that you will be the ones who force the ceasefire. You who thought that you were insignificant proved to be significant in the eyes of Netanyahu and Blinken. You who thought that your efforts were worth nothing were enough for Netanyahu and Blinken to discuss it in the war room. It was enough for Biden to send William Burns out because he felt Blinken made a mess. For those of you who study politics, you'll know whenever the CIA director flies out, that's when the big boys come out because they believe that the diplomats have failed miserably. When William Burns goes out, it's Biden saying, guys, I need this to wind down because these polls are really hurting me. And the Democrats are now saying, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this on campus, but on the stream, please put the opinions expressed by the speaker represent his alone and they do not represent those of everybody sitting here. They are mine alone, Sami al-Hamdi's opinions at all. The Democrats are saying that at the end of the day, voters will forget by November. That voters will forget what's happening by November. Will you forget by November? Will you forget by November? And they're also saying another thing which I thought was quite fascinating, that your choice is either Biden or Trump. First of all, one of the interesting things is this. For those of you who want to see more proof of Biden buckling, and I promise I won't go on too long, I'm almost done, I promise, even though I'm notorious for that statement. But still, Kamala Harris put out a video where she said, I'm not going to try the accent, but she said, we've launched an initiative to counter Islamophobia, the first in the White House initiative or the like. I ask you, do you think Kamala Harris woke up one day after 5 weeks, after thousands of Palestinians were killed, and said, Wallahi? She doesn't say Wallahi, but she said, you know, these Masakin, these poor Palestinians, they were killed. We need an counter Islamophobia. No, she sat on a table with Democrats, and they said students of Berkeley are angry, Muslims are angry, their allies are angry, and they're threatening to punish us. Let's throw them a piece of meat, something to suggest that we still care about them. Not only that, they sent out an email, which I thought was quite fascinating. They said that Trump wants to bring back the Muslim ban, and we stand against the Muslim ban. And I saw a wonderful response from an activist called Hind Makki, where she said, Democrats, please listen up. She put a screenshot of the email. Please listen up. We already survived 4 years of Trump. We know what we're getting. 15,000 Palestinians did not survive 4 years of Biden. We survived Trump. We can do it again if we have to. But 15,000 Palestinians did not survive the ethnic cleansing or the genocide. But I argue as a political analyst that you have a third option. Now, what do politicians fear more than anything else? Losing their seat. Do you think that any Democrat who has their seat is willing to sacrifice it for Biden? No. Now, let's calculate it. This is where we're going to strategize here in this room. Now, Biden, before he announced his second term, do you remember how no Democrat wanted to come out and say he should run for a second term? Do you remember how some of the top Democrats were saying that maybe he shouldn't run for a second term? And then Biden sort of blindsided them. He came down from a plane and said, I'm running because he knew Democrats were plotting to get rid of him. That suggests that there is a view, there is a strand in the Democrats that believes Biden should not run. Right. If in 5 of the swing states, or at least 3 of them, in Pennsylvania, in Michigan, and I can't remember the other one, you guys know, if the Muslim vote is the deciding vote in that swing state, if the Democrats are convinced that there is absolutely no way that you will forget before November, do you think they will wait for November to lose, or perhaps they might even entertain the prospect of changing their candidate from Joe Biden to somebody else? I think that in the next 3 months, if you make it absolutely clear that you will not forget, absolutely clear that the Democrats are destined for defeat, as long as they keep Genocide Joe as their candidate, as long as you keep shouting, say no to Genocide Joe, I think the reality is that the Democrats may convene a meeting in February and they say, you know what, it's really not worth it. If they're saying they'll vote for another candidate other than Biden, give it to them. At that point, all of the journalists will say that when you commit genocide and ethnic cleansing, you get punished. When you support settler colonialism, you get punished. When you support genocide, you get punished. They will say to you, but maybe the other candidate is worse. I'm not looking at the other candidate. I'm making it absolutely clear that you can't get away with genocide and ethnic cleansing. If the other candidate tries it, I'll punish him afterwards. But I'm showing you I have power. I'm showing you that I made you buckle. I'm showing you that I made you change your stance. I'm showing you that I have power. And I'm showing you that I can use that power. And you can't take me for granted. That's the point. I want to finish on this point. I swear to you, I'm sitting with corporate clients and they ask me, what is the reason that the US is changing its position? What is the reason that Ben Gvir today said, or yesterday, my time's a blur with this whole time difference thing. What is it? What made Ben Gvir say or warn Netanyahu that if he extends the truce, his government will collapse? Who is that message geared to? It's not geared to the US, they couldn't care less. It's not geared to us, it's geared to Netanyahu, which means a conversation took place on the table between the Israelis in which they panicked that the military operations, they may not be able to continue it for very long. And Ben Gvir is panicking and warning Netanyahu that if you stop the military operations, I will bring your government down. They are divided, they are splitting, they are turning on each other because you've put such pressure to bear that you changed the dynamics when people said that you couldn't. You changed the dynamics and you forced those divisions. You forced Netanyahu and Ben Gvir to fall out with one another. Yes, we haven't achieved the outcome that we want, but we're getting closer. Yes, we haven't achieved the outcome that we wanted, but if we'd been quiet, it would have been worse. The reality is the reason why I'm happy to stand here before you is because I'm so proud to look at the faces of people who said, I may not have the power I want, but I will use the power I have, and I will hope that makes a difference. And you made the difference. You made the difference. You made the difference. Keep going. Don't let them tell you stop. Don't let them get you to be quiet. Yes, it breaks our hearts. Yes, we feel the despair. Yes, we feel weak at times, but don't stop moving. Keep moving. Martin Luther King has a wonderful saying that I love. He says, if you can fly, fly. If you can't fly, run. If you can't run, walk. If you can't walk, crawl. But by God, keep moving. Keep moving, keep mobilizing, don't stop. Because it all makes a difference. Think about it. You guys are here in LA, in San Francisco, on the other side of the world, far away from everything. But your voice is being heard thousands of miles elsewhere. I came from London thousands of miles this way to try to amplify your efforts and for you to amplify mine. All our efforts are coming together because across the world, we're mobilizing together as one body. We are one unit, mobilizing to make the difference. It is a battle. It is a struggle, but public opinion is changing. People are changing their minds. You're seeing it. I saw a TikTok video. Yes, I watch TikTok. Fine. But there was a TikTok video which I loved where it has an African-American girl who was saying that she always supported Israel, and she's done a sketch. She does one where she pretends to be Israeli, where she says, oh my God, October 7th is really something really horrible to us. They came and they killed us. And she goes, oh my God, why? Why did they do that? Why? Nah, they're just barbaric. They're animals. But I don't understand. Why would they do that? Like, why would people just go randomly kill? I got to read about this. No, don't read. Don't read about it. Don't open the books. Don't read about it. No, I got to read about it. No, don't read the books. People are reading and they are learning. People are reading and they are realizing. I call this period the Great Awakening. And I'll finish on this point. Some of you may be really upset at the death toll. As Muslims, we believe that those who are killed in dhulman, those who oppressed who are killed, or killed in the way of Allah, do not consider them to be dead. They are with Allah, happy with what Allah has given them. Allah felt that maybe this might not be enough to reassure you. So Allah told you what they are saying when they are calling back to us. They call out to us, their souls that have left this world. They don't go through limbo, they go straight to Jannah, straight to heaven. And they call out to us and they say, we don't feel sadness anymore. We don't feel pain anymore. There's no bombs where we are. We are happy with what Allah has given us. There's a photo that really broke my heart, which is of a father who's sitting in Gaza and his daughter has died. And the artist draws a picture of the ghost of his daughter and she has his hand behind him. And she tells him, Baba, don't worry. Baba, there's no bombs where I am. Baba, I'm happy. Don't be sad. You also the picture of the bearded man with his granddaughter, where he's holding his granddaughter. You know, and he says, Ya ruh al-ruh, the soul of my soul. And he opens his eyes. And you know, when you have kids, it takes on a much harder meaning as well. Because you picture your own daughter. I picture my Selma there. And he opens the eyes, you know, and he says, you know, if only my daughter could come back to me, my granddaughter. All of this is moving people. It's breaking their hearts. It's humanizing the Palestinians. And that's why I finish on this point. What the settler colonizer fears the most is not that the colonized will eventually fight back. It's that the world will finally see the colonized as human. What they fear is that they spent 75 years telling the world that these were barbaric animals. But instead today the world is seeing, hang on a second, these people are human. These people are babies. They are women. They are men, ordinary men. They are civilians like us. And they are being bombed simply because they want to take a piece of land. And they believe they're entitled to it because of a 4,000-year-old claim. Public opinion is shifting. You may be feeling the pressure, but it's shifting. You may be feeling the pain, but it's shifting. The reality is they are the ones who are panicking. They are the ones who are buckling. And it's because we are roaring. It's because we keep going. It's because we keep shouting. We keep retweeting. We keep amplifying the message. And we keep doing what we're doing. And I promise you, if we keep doing what we're doing, historians will write that these changes were brought about because we said no. We said no more genocide, no more ethnic cleansing. Keep doing what you're doing. I came here to tell you to do that, to keep going because it's making a difference. Never let anybody say it doesn't make a difference. And barakallahu fikum.
Takbir. 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 May Allah reward all of you for coming today. May Allah reward our speakers who gave such amazing insight. Say no to genocide, Joe. So alhamdulillah, may Allah reward all of you for coming out here today. May Allah reward the organizers, the speakers, the attendees. We do ask that everyone please as you walk out, to take a pamphlet from Tawasul Institute. It's a pamphlet that has some information about Palestine, some ways to take action. And please take the papers that are on your tables. We need to have as many emails as possible sent to Berkeley City Council to call for a ceasefire. And last but not least, please join us for Qiyam tonight. Jazakumullah khair. Wassalamu alaikum.